All right. I hope it don't mess nobody up because the meeting link I was trying to use is gone and it should have been set for reoccurring. So I don't know.
I hope not either. I was just waiting, so.
Yeah, so I was setting up this other one. I have one that I keep as a default that I actually had used for the last session. So that was still in my Zoom thing. Other than that, I would have had to go in and set up a new session. I don't know why the other one isn't there, but I am going to pull up my screen. Let's see. Okay, so we're going to start with Unit 5. It rides off of a lot of what we went over in 3 and 4. So we're going to focus on the sexual response cycle. And let's see. Okay. I'm going to send a message out and let everybody know we're on. Okay, so everyone has the capacity for experiencing pleasure. Alfred Kinsey and his colleagues were among the first to scientifically introduce men and women as sexual beings in the context of pleasure. What we view as romantic and erotic and how we experience arousing stimuli varies greatly from person to person, and each of us experiences pleasure in numerous ways. Recording, hold on, one more thing. Recording. On your end, does it show that it's recording, sis? Can you see the little red dot?
Yes, I can see the red dot.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. So the models of sexual response. There are a number of models for describing the stages of human sexual response. Research has been inconsistent in determining which of these models most women identify with. So through this unit, you're going to go over a few different models of sexual response. So another study was by Sand and Fisher. The first one we just talked about was by Alfred Kinsey and colleagues, okay? So the next one we're going to talk about is Sand and Fisher. Sand and Fisher examined women's endorsement of sexual response models. The result of this study indicated that an equal number of women endorsed each sexual response cycle. These competing ideas about how things work can be interesting to explore. We present 3 models and suggest that there is value in each. So Masters and Johnson's model of human sexual response, they went through 4 phases, which was excitement, plateau, orgasm, and resolution. Okay, so that's Masters and Johnson's. Their model demonstrated a difference between male and female sexual response. For males, the resolution phase included a refractory period during which he is likely to be unable to experience another orgasm. The model also describes the capacity for multiple orgasms prior to a resolution phase for women. This model is based on their work providing therapy to couples using a behavioral framework. So a common criticism of this model is that it was developed based on work with women who could not only experience orgasm fairly reliably, but who could also do it in a laboratory setting. So just reading through the lines, somebody that can do that in a laboratory setting and frequently, their results are going to be different than just the average population, right? So it's just to say that they're finding that with the models that they've come up with, not everybody fits into one category or one shell. You know what I mean? So, so a common criticism of this model is that it was developed based on a work with women who could only experience the orgasm fairly reliably, but who could do it in a laboratory setting. So some sexuality researchers have questioned whether there might be differences in sexual response model for women who are less likely to orgasm or who don't experience orgasm. So for example, do these women spend a longer amount of time in the excitement phase? Additionally, this model was linear in nature, with one phase always happening before the next, which is not necessarily how sexual response always works. So what happens to arousal and excitement if and when a woman does not orgasm? Okay, so Masters and Johnson's model, although still widely used, ignored the psychological and motivational factors. So, ladies, I'm not sure if you're following along with the terminology, and it's okay if you've had to read back over it a few times. But like in layman terms, what it is breaking down is how do women and men experience their sexual process. So they're calling it a sexual response. So everyone doesn't go through excitement, plateau, orgasm, and then a resolution. So they're explaining some of the differences. So different scientists came up and said, oh, well, you know, this happens first, or guys could do part of that, but they don't usually orgasm multiple times where women can, etc. So let's go down to Helen Singer Kaplan's model. So in this unit, what you would do is maybe read through and kind of highlight what each scientist model was and the difference, because that will be on the quiz. They just want you to get an idea what Singer and Kaplan said versus Masters and Johnson's. So later at the end of the 1970s, a pioneering sex therapist and author, Helen Singer Kaplan, suggested that based on her experience as a therapist, sexual difficulties fell in three categories. There's desire, excitement, and orgasm. These then became the three phases of her model for sexual response. By including the desire phase in the model, Kaplan presented a unique perspective of including non-genital changes and sexual response. While this was a welcome addition to the discussion, for many women and even more men, spontaneous sexual desire does not proceed and cause sexual interactions. In common experience, sexual desire increase after sexual interactions have begun. So think about it. Have you ever had a sexual encounter and you weren't into it until y'all got busy? Meaning that you didn't go through the stages of really desiring and wanting to and mentally being caught up. So in relationships, it's often even with clients that we're dealing with parties and stuff, sometimes they can go through a whole sexual interaction and not really be into it mentally. So they're realizing that desire is not a phase that's always present prior to enjoying sex. Sometimes you can get caught up or get involved or more into it once you've started. So in this common experience, sexual desire, oh, we got a question. Let me see. A good example is also when you're being awakened from sleep. Exactly. You might not be mentally going, oh yeah, I'm ready. And that increased blood flow and all that stuff we talked about, that's not there yet, right? But we a lot of times still partake in sexual activity. And in the end, we may enjoy it. But before it started, we were not, that desire phase had not even showed up. So perhaps women or men you have worked with or have talked about this with you, they may have noticed that they didn't feel like having sex. Once they did, they actually started feeling desire for their partner. So this is a feedback loop that is often experienced by both men and women. They may have even wondered why they don't have sex more often now that they started. Also, this model is similar to the Masters and Johnson's model in that it is linear. It does not take into account relationship or contextual factors and remains very orgasm oriented. And we all know that everyone doesn't orgasm. Rosemary Basin model. A more contemporary model for sexual response has been provided by Rosemary Basin in 2001. Now, this model focuses on cycles and recognizes that people engage in sexual interactions for reasons beyond sexual hunger or desire. The main idea is that various cycles within the mind, as well as between the mind and the body, are interacting throughout a sexual experience. Sexual interaction with a partner can enhance emotional closeness and influence arousal. Here, the initial sense of sexual desire can develop later during sexual interaction, right? This model proves the beneficial separation of psychological sexual response from subjective arousal and the perception of feeling turned on. This fits with the experience of about 1/3 of the women in the sample in the study by Sand and Fisher, who rarely sense innate sexual hunger. However, those women who were more likely to endorse this model of sexual response had more poorly adjusted sexual functioning than the women who endorse one of the other two models we discussed above. So we're going to touch on the brain and sexual response. It is well established that the brain and body are not separate entities when it comes to sexual response. They interact as we respond in sexual ways. However, they may react differently for men and women. A recent examination of the literature on the topic by Cheevers and colleagues found that men tend to have a greater deal of agreement between their thoughts and psychological responses than women did. Often, women are less able to recognize when they are aroused. This could be due to the different levels of visibility of physiological arousal response. So with men, they can see that they are aroused, but women, it's not visible. Regardless of whether it is recognized or not, the brain plays a strong role in sexual response. So we're going to talk about the limbic system. It is the region of the brain associated with emotional and motivation and is important to sexual function. Specifically, parts of the hypothalamus are associated with sexual arousal and behavior. So remember we talked about previously about chemicals and their great impact that it has on all of us, and that there's so many things that affect our hormones, external factors. So chemicals in the brain called neurotransmitters influence sexual arousal and sexual response as well. So we have dopamine, which is the one that excites and facilitates sexual arousal, where serotonin is a substance that appears to reduce or inhibit sexual arousal. Oxytocin is a hormone produced here that increases throughout sexual response and may have a bonding effect on the partner. So key to know these neurotransmitters, okay? Dopamine, serotonin, oxytocin, and was it one more? 1, 2, 3. Thought it was 4. Okay. So before, during, and after sexual interactions, the body is providing feedback to the mind. Many physiological factors, including our emotions, I said psychological on that one. Psychological factors, including our emotions, our sense of physical arousal, our sense of genital arousal, our mental excitement, and other thoughts or cognitions provide additional stimuli for sexual response. So a positive experience in these areas makes them a positive sexual stimuli. A negative experience can make these factors negative stimuli for response. So, for example, the sight of a partner's genitals may produce positive feelings and enhance arousal, or a negative reaction that may inhibit sexual arousal. So this is one of the reasons why each of us have such a different experience. What turns one on may not turn the other person on, because there are so many key different factors, and it's really using like all of your senses, and your brain is sending these signals out, and that's what helps to determine how well your experience is. Okay, so we also carry the connections made in our minds about these stimuli and how they have worked for us or not in the past. Yes. So if you're looking at a penis and this one, and it looks like something you've seen before and you didn't have a good experience, automatically your mind is going to go there. But if you've had a wonderful experience, maybe the way this person's smell is a trigger for you. Ooh, this smell right here reminds me of, you already will mentally make that positive connection. So these memories, as well as our values and feelings about what is right or wrong, what is attractive, unattractive, attractive or sexy or not, can influence how we translate the stimuli now and in the future. So this is really good. Of course, our five senses play a big role in sexual response. So at the same time, when you're talking about toys or products, reading this section is really good, because we learned about the erogenous zones in the previous chapter. Now this is where you match those erogenous zones with the five senses. So touch. What are all the products that we have that encourage touch? I'm going to show one, for example. So we sell this product, which is, it's a tickle and whip. So you have a little tickler here and you have a whip here. It is to encourage the feeling of touch, and it has a really nice feel to the skin. Okay. And so this is one product that you can sell to someone. Okay. Sight can influence sexual response too. So, you know, we have like, this isn't one of ours, but we use the little blindfold. We have the satin blindfold. That is a part of our bondage set. Everyone doesn't have to go to all the levels of bondage, but using your senses is very key. We have taste. It's an aspect of sexual interaction that can enliven the experience. So our flavored lubricants, our massage products, things that are our bosom buddy, lip balm is great. It's for your lips, your nips, everything above the hips. So that can create an inviting experience. For others, it has a tingle. It comes in multiple flavors, things like that. Smell. We not only have the different products that has the pheromone oils in it, but our products, we have so many different fragrances. Are you are you into amber? Are you into jasmine? Are you into our honey and gold? So we have so many different fragrances that you can use that can be a great way to turn not only yourself, you wake your own stimuli up, but also your partner. Okay. Sound. Are you playing good music? Are you a person that likes to hear nature? Do you want your favorite songs? Do you want trap music? What do you like? And finding out what you like and also finding out what your partner likes is helpful. If they like trap music and you like to listen to Anita Baker, y'all gonna have to meet half and half, because this is gonna affect your stimuli response. Okay. All these senses can both enhance or inhibit a sexual experience depending on individual preferences. So there's a great deal of variation between both women and men. with each gender. Okay, so I'm gonna skip on. Fantasy is another way that the mind is connected to sexual response. So you have your romantic and erotic ideas that are very popular way to enhance your sexual response and may play a role at all stages of the response cycle. Okay, so this is good. So dressing up, using bondage, using our date night cards, all those things to help with some additional ideas. So fantasy is actually a very commonly suggested technique in couples therapy. It is good for treatment issues concerning desire, arousal, and orgasm. Interestingly, Hicks and Littenberg found that 98% of men and 80% of women reported having fantasies about someone other than their primary partner in the past 2 months. And so fantasy is something that is very encouraged. It says romantic and erotic ideas are a very popular way to enhance sexual response and may play a role at the stages of the response cycle. It may be that an erotic thought or fantasy is what triggers a sexual desire, or perhaps it facilitates sexual excitement and orgasm during your sexual interactions. Hint, hint, that's on the quiz. So I won't read this page, but each individual's nature of sexual response is very key, and finding out what yours is depends on you putting in the work. You need to know what kind of fragrances and smells that you like. You need to know what kind of taste that you like and you don't like. What type of touch do you like? Are you a person that likes a firm hand, or do you like really soft? Someone that doesn't like it really soft, they might say like, oh, you playing with me, I don't like how that feels. It's like ticklish instead of massaging and being caressing and warm and comforting. So it doesn't mean that the person's doing it wrong. It's that's not what you like, right? So it's going to take you to know what you like and how you need it and share that with your partner. Sorry. We're going to go to the next section. So the sexual response cycle, despite all the different theories being broken down, they have excitement and what that looks like. Okay. Nipples becoming erect, breath quickens, skins becomes flush. You have plateau, which is your heart rate or your blood pressure and breathing and muscle tension increase. You have the orgasm where your nipples are erect and your heart speeds up. And then you have resolution following the orgasm, where the blood flows away from the genitals and the heart rate and blood pressure decrease. Okay. The testicles drop. So it's a different response in male versus females. Many of us have seen these responses, but didn't know that they were a part of what we call the sexual response cycle. Okay. So there are different variations and challenges to sexual response. To avoid a very large extent, one sexual response is a combination of many factors, including relational issues between the partners and overall health. What your relationship like with a person will 100% affect your sexual response. Okay. Your overall health. Are you on any type of medication? Are you naturally a moody person? Do you have some underlying things that sometimes you're experiencing some pain in your knee or your back, your sciatic, or your something like that? What is your overall health like? Are you flexible? Okay. Just overall the well-being of both partners. Normal, quote unquote, sexual response may be interrupted or impacted temporarily or permanently for many reasons, and these are not uncommon. So concerns about sexual response are very common among individuals and couples. One approach to deciding if sexual dissatisfaction is a problem is to know if it has caused a problem for an individual's life or relationship. Rather than relying on the normal sexual response cycle, going through excitement, plateau, orgasm, resolution, it is much more valuable to rely on the sexual experience of the individual within the context of the relationship. So was it value added, or did it become a problem? Variations and challenges continued. It is important to note that one's level of sexual desires across the lifespan varies across the lifespan. And sometimes people go through times when they experience very high sexual desire, and other times when they find it difficult to feel interested in sex. Most of these are not diagnosable problems. In fact, quite often people experience lower levels of desire because of common everyday life stressors such as having a baby, feeling overworked, not having had enough sleep, or feeling sick. It is important to acknowledge that sometimes, just sometimes, ladies, sexual problems are an appropriate response to a particular situation. And I'm sure that each and every one of us, because we're here together, know we have a lot in common, that we've experienced this at some point. And that's just life happening. There is nothing wrong with us physically that's making us not be able to perform. It is just being very overwhelmed with everyday life stressors, and that can inhibit your libido. Okay. For example, research has widely supported that a primary motivator in women's sexual response is emotional closeness with a romantic partner. So if the emotional closeness isn't present for some people, it may be natural for sexual response to struggle. So it all depends on you. So you have these definitions that you should go over. What is hypoactive sexual desire, okay, versus hyperactive sexual desire. And then you have sexual aversion, okay, actively just avoiding sexual interactions. So you have hypo is absence or the desire, barely having a desire for it. So that's the hypoactive. And the hyper is like how it sounds, persistent desire for sex that's difficult to satiate. Okay. So these different types of sexual problems are best diagnosed and addressed by a professionally trained counselor. So we talked about staying within our lane. We do not want to diagnose our clients. They can receive help through the American Association for Sex Educators, Counselors, and Therapists. If you use this www.aasect.org site, you can look by zip code and find providers in your area. I love that. I love sharing that with others. When the people are like, I don't know, who do I go to, whatever. There, unless you find some personal references or people that you've networked with and found, like I know a therapist for pelvic floor therapy. And if anybody is in my area, I usually recommend or refer her over. If not, I know where to find other therapists. Okay. So sexual arousal can be a source of dissatisfaction for both men and women. Among known challenges are a female sexual arousal disorder, a persistent genital arousal disorder, a male erectile disorder, which is also known as ED. And so these things you want to become familiar with and know when and how to help your clients, right? There's some book recommendations here, and I definitely highly recommend that you read through these chapters, okay? So lifestyle influences and how they affect your sexual response. So we talked about being overwhelmed, right? So stress, whether it's from work or caring for loved ones or within a romantic relationship, it can have a tremendous impact on your sexual response. Your overall health, you have your mental health. We talked about medications and health treatments, okay? Being significantly overweight or obese, in addition to complexities it creates for overall health and well-being, it can impact physical abilities for some sexual positions and experiences. And remember, ladies, we have two really good products, and one is the Sexy Spreader. It helps with different positions. So if you can't hold your feet, your knees, your legs up in certain positions, it is a really good toy. It's not a toy. It's in our catalog, but it's it's kind of a strap, and it helps with that flexibility. So that's something that you can offer someone that would be very beneficial to their sexual experience. Okay. Look it up. And then the other one is the swing. Now the swing is up to 300 pounds, but it may be good for positions. Maybe their partner is very large and maybe they're under the 300 pounds. So they could be the person in the swing, and it could provide some really good new positions, things that they couldn't do without it, right? Being significantly underweight can also impair a person's sexual response because they may have low body fat or hormone production. Sometimes they might even have bad imagery. They don't even like how they look. So those things can impact a person's sexual response. It says performance anxiety about one's ability to perform. That is very common. If there has been some trouble before, then that might be at the forefront of their mind, even though they're having a new experience. It could even be a different person, but they're worried about how they're going to look, how they're going to perform. And that could be male or female. Okay. Smoking and the use of other alcohol and drugs can initially decrease inhibitions, but ultimately can have more negative impacts on the sexual response, including desire, arousal, orgasm. It can impact those stages. Sometimes it can be a good thing and sometimes not so much. But that particular section is really, really good. Lifestyle influences. Okay. So again, we have the interactive activity and examples of how people can decline sex. Really quick and easy. And this one is one part. It's not multiple sections. All right. You have your 15-question quiz. For example, I'm going to get y'all to just answer this one. All 5 senses play a role in sexual response. True or false? Somebody unmute and tell me.
True.
That is very true. All 5 senses do have an impact, right? Okay. Let me see. Hold on 1 minute. That is correct, but let me get to this next section. I'm going to answer this message really quick. So we're going to go to sexual orientation, attraction, and identity. And although this is a lot of content, we are going to go over some of the basics in the next 30 minutes, well, 25 minutes, and get as much as we can in. Hold on 1 second. All right, I'm back. All right. So we talked a little bit about this, I believe, in our first class, and we were touching on just some sensitivities when it comes to sexual identity. And so this unit right here, I definitely challenge each of you to read, reread, get some notes and work on, because it's a work in progress. Okay. Some of us are more experienced in this area and some of us are not. And it's okay. Remember, it's okay to not know something, but it's great to know where to find the information. So let's go over the definition of what is sexual orientation. So an important aspect of human development is the development of one's sense of self. Establishing identity that integrates aspects of one's sexual self can bring a sense of cohesion to life. Understanding who we are and who we can be as a lifelong process. Our experience of who we are is influenced to some degree by how others react to us. We are who we are in the context of a community and a larger society. Living in accordance with your own values is a characteristic of a healthy lifestyle. So, what is sexual orientation? Sexual orientation refers to enduring patterns of emotional, romantic, and/or sexual attractions towards women, men, and people of more than one gender, or to no one at all. And that is a definition by the American Psychological Association 2019. Sexual orientation and sexual identity are used to mean many things. We use these terms to refer to the way people classify themselves sexually. So there's terms such as heterosexual, straight, well, heterosexual or / straight, that's one, right? Then there's gay, there's lesbian, there's bisexual, there's asexual. A person's sexual behavior and sexual desires may or may not be considered by others to be consistent with their self-identified sexual identity and orientation. For example, some women who identify as heterosexual may have fantasies about being sexual with another woman, or may have had sex with a woman in the recent or distant past. Similarly, some people who identify as bisexual may only be sexually active with people of their same or other gender and not with both sexes. That means that they could be comfortable with either partner, but at the time, or maybe for that season, maybe they're only dating women, maybe they're only dating men, but they're like, I go either way. In a study that examined the sexual identity of partners over time, Rosario and colleagues found that 57% of the adolescent participants were inconsistent over time with their gay or lesbian identification. It just means they're still figuring it out. Almost 1/5 or 18% transition between bisexual and gay lesbian, and 15% consistently identified as bisexual over time. But just because someone's sexual identity and behavior don't appear to match up from the outside doesn't mean the person themselves isn't perfectly content exploring and being who they are. Sexual identity and behavior don't have to follow any particular rules or expectations. So everyone has a sexual orientation. Specifically, sexual orientation refers to the directions of your feelings of romantic and erotic attraction. That's it. Generally, when we speak of the direction of one's sexual orientation, we are speaking of making distinctions between people being attracted to the people of their same sex, which is considered homosexuality, being gay or lesbian, attracted to people of the other sex, heterosexuality or being straight, or attracted to people of more than one gender, meaning bisexuality or pansexuality. Now, all sexual orientations are healthy and normal, and we don't know what causes any individual sexual orientations. Some believe that people are born with their sexual orientation and do not choose these feelings of attraction. It is also widely accepted that the direction of your feelings of attraction may change over time during your life. This means that a person's sexual orientation may change somewhat during their lifetime. Researchers Lisa Diamond had dedicated a great deal of her career to understanding the fluidity of women's sexual orientation. Okay, I'm going to skip through this part. All right. This talks about how common it is or not for people to identify as gay, lesbian, or bisexual. Factors that decrease the confidence in statistics about sexual orientation include inconsistency in how research questions are asked, the diversity of contexts in which sexual behaviors take place, the fluid nature of sexual expression and orientation throughout your life, and cultural and personal attitudes and beliefs about sexual orientation. So most studies indicate that approximately 5 to 7% of Americans identify as non-heterosexual in terms of their self-identified sexuality. However, larger proportions of Americans may have sexual desires or fantasies about people of their same sex, or may have engaged in sexual behavior with people of their same sex. Again, just because a person identifies as a certain sexual orientation does not mean that we can tell what their sexual behaviors are like or what they have been, I would add, because what you did in the past, you might not do it anymore. Sexual identity, sometimes a way to own our identity, and also as a way to help others identify us, we embrace various labels for ourselves related to our sexual identity. Examples of labels people choose to describe their sexual identity might be partnered, or bisexual, or transgender, or just sexually active, female, queer, dyke, gay man, adult virgin, etc. The list goes on, and the language evolves over time. The language is sometimes loaded and can be based on political and other intended impacts. Sometimes labels are combined as monogamous and heterosexual, as in a monogamous heterosexual male. So many labels can be perceived as derogatory if spoken by one who does not wear the label for her or himself. For example, some gay men may use the term fag or queen to refer to the gay men. However, the use of this word by others may be deemed as offensive. This is similar to how some women use the term bitch in an affectionate or friendly way with their friends, but they may feel offended or hurt or angry if a man were use this term to refer to them or any other woman. Can you ladies relate to that with the labels?
Yep.
Yep. Okay. As such, it is preferable to allow people to self-identify in the terms of identity labels that they choose to embrace, rather than assuming an identity based on our perceptions or stereotypes. When in doubt, ask people how they identify themselves and how they prefer to be identified, and respect their wishes accordingly. So that's the best way, just to ask them. Also, try to remember that some people prefer to use no labels at all. Another variation still is that some people use some labels with some groups and are more private about wearing that banner in other situations or in other groups. So be sensitive about outing others. This means try not to assume that because you know how someone prefers to be identified with, that they want other members of your group to know them that way too. So that's really key when you're dealing with family and close friends. As you would with other matters of self-disclosure, allow each person to self-identify each time. This relates to all kinds of labels, and we can use with each other, from relationship status to sexual orientation and level of sexual experience or one's age. Some of the elements of our sexual identity that we may or may not attach labels to help describe and represent ourselves include sexual orientation, who we have romantic and erotic feelings for; gender identity, that is a spectrum richer than two choices; sexual behavior, what we do and don't do alone and with others; relationship status and patterns, single, partner, monogamous, polyamorous, married, divorced, parent, etc. Attitudes, those are values and beliefs about these various aspects of sexual identity, which create the meaning and context. Good stuff, good stuff. So we also talked about culture in the previous units. Here we learn more about how culture and sexual identity impact and its impact on your sexual experience. Dr. Kinsey research involving interviews with thousands of men and women, and they published their first in sexual behavior in the human male and later in the sexual behavior in the human female, documented that more people had engaged in same-sex sexual behaviors with far more frequency than had been previously acknowledged or understood. In documenting this variation in human sexual expression, Kinsey developed a widely respected model for conceptualizing sexual orientation. The idea that we all have a range of what and whom we are attracted to has been elaborated. 10 minutes, 9 minutes, okay? Very often, most people are in a different place on the Kinsey continuum for some of these measures. It is not unusual for one's behavior to not match the identity or orientation category they identify with. So there's a chart here, and it shows you on this continuum scale, heterosexual being on the far left with a 0, and homosexual with a 6 on the far right. And the heterosexual rating scale goes from, what did I say, 0 to 6. So attitudes and beliefs about the sexual orientation are diverse in American culture in the US, and only female-male couples could legally marry. So it wasn't until 2015 that same-sex couples could legally marry in the United States. So social acceptance for the LGBTQ plus individuals has increased greatly over the past years, and especially as of 2019. Most Americans, about 63%, support same-sex marriage. So you have the Klein sexual orientation grid. This is another model for conceptualizing sexual orientation and preferences. So you have the Klein sexual orientation grid. This model presents a substantially more detailed conceptualization of sexual orientation than many others, and was first introduced by Dr. Fritz Klein in his book, The Bisexual Option. So you would go through and complete the grid. So each person receives a rating from 1 to 7 for each of the 21 combinations of rows and grids. The meanings themselves are described below. So take a look at the grid. So you have sexual attraction, sexual behavior, sexual fantasies, emotional preference, social preference, heterosexual, homosexual lifestyle, and self-identification. And then you have these points, variables down here. So you have A through E and F and G. So you would put a number 1 through 7, and they have them coded by what those numbers mean. So for example, if you were doing sexual attraction, are you a 1 where it says the other sex only? Or are you a 4 where it says both sexes? Or a 6 where it says same sex mostly? So past, present, and then ideal. What do you want? It might not be happening for you, but what do you want? And this may be good for you to go over with your partner. It may be even good for you to go over with your teens or your adult children, especially as they're trying to figure some things out. Just an idea, but this is a really good scale to help you all kind of understand all that is. It's so layered, all that is encompassed with sexual orientation. So you have heterosexism and homophobia. So heterosexism is the preference for heterosexuality over the other orientation possibilities. With this comes an assumption that everyone is. So sometimes when we're doing our parties, we have to be careful of language to be very inclusive, because we live in a more of a heterosexist society. Okay, this can be especially true for those whose ethnic or subcultures or religious faith espouse condemnation for homosexuality and bisexuality. So we want to be very careful not to be offensive. Okay, so you have homophobia. Homophobia is having extreme feelings about the unacceptability of homosexuality. Maybe this is a hot button topic on your scale. So we went over that in the previous chapter. See those layers? Maybe these things are sensitive to you. Maybe you're passionate about it and actually you're very open to it, but hate that others are mistreated. So maybe it's a hot button topic for a different reason. Okay. So through this unit, it will talk about what homophobia is and what homophobic behaviors are and how to avoid them. You don't want to do this. So there's a chart down here, and it'll also tell you ways to make sure that you're including people's rights and that you are one of the things says educate yourself. So don't be ignorant and throwing out terms and talking to people in a certain kind of way and not really understanding it. Okay, so don't have a lot of homophobic jokes and things that can be very offensive and harmful. Okay, don't force people to hide. Shame is something that we're very, very much against. And so these are some great guides and things that you can do to not fall in that category, not even through your ignorance. Okay. Bisexuality. People who identify as bisexual sometimes experience stereotypical assumptions and discrimination about their orientation from both heterosexual and gay or lesbian identified individuals. So many people subscribe to think that there are only two orientations or attractions to those of the other sex, heterosexuality, or attraction to those of the same sex, being gay or lesbian. That is a common misconception, and it is that individuals who identify as bisexual are equally attracted to women and men. That's not true. You might like women a little bit and like men a lot, or like the vice versa. I actually like men, but I'm actually more attracted to women. Okay. Read those chapters, especially if these are hot button topics. Those are chapters that you should really read and understand, and it will bring some really good levels of comfort. Okay, inclusiveness and acceptance. Again, we talk about language and being diverse. Really reading through this unit and understanding the differences, you'll find out that some of it is not as complex as what we think. But understanding and knowing the definitions and the breakdowns is what's going to bring that comfort level. Okay. So our roles as sexual health promotion professionals or sex educators, it is important to foster an attitude of inclusiveness and acceptance of human beings regardless of their sexual orientation. So to do so, you might be helped by recognition that sexual orientation and identity are complex. People of all sexual orientations live, work, and play amongst us. Heterosexism and homophobia does exist. Fear is based on ignorance, and everyone can have their own personal values about this issue, but it is important to not make anyone feel bad about who they are. So those simple rules provide a framework to maintain a good, healthy relationship with people of different sexual orientations. So of course you have your references. There's an interactive activity. And what does homophobia mean and how is it harmful? What can be done to decrease homophobia? Please read, and there's 2 sections to this. Also give 2 examples of how sexual health professionals can use inclusive language in regards to sexual identity and orientation. And that's what we're doing. This is the practical use of it. in your parties or your presentation of products if you haven't even done parties, but you're just selling products by sharing them and wearing them and showing them off. How are you explaining the products? What language can you use to make sure that you're being inclusive of different sexual identity or orientation? Just put those examples down in those activities. That's all it's asking. Okay. And of course, you got that quiz. All right. Please unmute. Do you have any questions for me? Anybody?
No questions.
Okay. All right. I hope this was helpful to breaking down units 5 and 6, and that you are able to hop on and do the activities and quizzes if you haven't already. So let me stop sharing. There we go. I was grateful for you ladies taking out your Sunday and sharing it with us. And let me see. All right, we got a quick little picture. Let me see. All right, let me see. All right, I think I got it. I gotta remember how she saved it for me last time, but it was good. I thank you all, and I hope you all to have a great rest of your happy Sunday, and that you can get this 5 and 6 done so we can keep it moving.
You ladies have a great Sunday too.
Thank you.
You
Bye-bye.
too. Bye-bye.